Wow, you guys have got some crazy imaginations. So a few days ago, I put out a community post asking you guys for your theories on Spider-Man No Way Home, what you guys expect to happen in the film. And I've selected just a handful of theories to talk about in today's video, but if you want to do something like this again, please do say so in the comments below. And just a reminder, these videos are made possible by my supporters on this platform, so if you do want to support me, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And be sure to check out the Patreon link in the description below. The villains aren't from the Raimi or Webb universes, but are all from one universe. So they're similar to the other versions, but are also different. And that explains how they're all still alive. Also, they killed the Spider-Man of their universe. Just a theory. So this is something I was kind of thinking about, especially for Doc Ock. I didn't think that he would be the native Raimiverse Doc Ock, but like a variant of that universe. Hence why it doesn't have to necessarily change the redemption of Doc Ock that we got at the end of Spider-Man 2. It would also explain why characters like Electro and Green Goblin are getting redesigns in this film as well. Maybe this alternate universe is like an amalgamation of the Amazing Spider-Man and Raimi universes. The question that then raises is, how would Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come into the fold? Obviously, they haven't actually been confirmed for this movie either way. There's a lot of very convincing stuff around, but confirmation is confirmation, and we don't have that yet. And perhaps it's more an instance of the sort of meta-casting thing. They've cast these characters as they were in the Raimi and Webb series, but they come from a universe that pays more homage to that. I think either way, what we're going to be getting, even if they don't mention it, is like variants of the Raimi and Mark Webb universes, in that they're exactly the same, but it allows for the characters to come over without having any impact on those stories. For example, a lot of people are very worried about Dr. Octavius being a villain in this movie after he was redeemed in Spider-Man 2, and Alfred Molina has said in an interview it takes place after the events of Spider-Man 2, but like, they're variants for all it matters. This is a variant that relapsed. Let's face it, put it this way. When Spider-Man 2 came out in 2004, they didn't make that movie thinking, oh yeah, one day there'll be a Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man reboot that's gonna fold this and another reboot into one movie. That was never the intention. Spider-Man 2 is still very much its own thing. Here's a theory that makes me kind of worried for the movie, but it could be a possibility. You know how Marvel likes to troll us by having an actor play a character we're excited to see, and then it turns out he's not a character at all and he's just a joke? Ben Kingsley with the Mandarin and Iron Man 3, and also Evan Peters with who we thought was all Quicksilver but turned out to be someone named Ralph Bohner. I fear they may pull that off for No Way Home if Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield show up in this film, that they might not actually be Spider-Man. Maybe they're a Mysterio illusion, or something that tells us they're not really Spider-Man. It's something I really hope does not happen, but from what I've seen of the MCU, I could still see it as a possibility. This is something I was saying, don't necessarily rule out that these are the Spider-Men of that world. I did mention maybe the multiverse is some form of Mysterio illusion in a previous theory video, but going by the trailer, it does very much look like the multiverse is opening. Going by everything that's happened in the Loki series, it very much feeds into that as well, so I think we are getting a full-on multiverse. And as I say, likely it may be, there's still no guarantee that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will be in the film, in spite of some very convincing evidence that says otherwise. It takes me back to my Dream Cinema review of Spider-Man No Way Home. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but in the Dream Cinema version, basically, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield played members of like a Spidey squad whose costumes were an imitation of what their original costumes were, and they were more just Easter eggs than anything else. I feel like, though, going by the marketing of this movie, it's kind of too late for them to just be Easter eggs if they're in this movie, so we'll see, but like, yeah, I understand the concern here. Marvel have pulled the rug from under our feet multiple times before. I remember the sheer excitement at Evan Peters returning as Quicksilver and the possible implications of that, and I was genuinely surprised that they opted to make that kind of a gotcha scenario. The MCU does weird and wacky shit, but given that we've just had the Loki finale that has opened the multiverses, and we've seen the trailer in all of its glory showing that there's some form of multiverse going on, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think, you know, it's safe to say they might be back, and that if they do, it will be in their original roles. Or at least time variant versions of that going by the previous thread. Ned will be the Hobgoblin. Images on set have him pictured with the signature hood in the background. Keep in mind, I believe they're doing this because it's a multiverse story. Obviously, Ned will not remain the Hobgoblin, as that would be out of character for him. But that's where my tinfoil hat theory comes in, where they set up Flash Thompson to become the MCU mainline Hobgoblin. Many fans have pointed out the similarities between his family life and Harry Osborn, and his new blonde hair being more in line with the Ultimate Comics only furthers this idea for me. Sorry for rambling, pup. Enjoy my theory. Oh god, no need to apologize, man. Yeah, as I've kind of been thinking, like, I cannot imagine the core MCU Ned becoming the Hobgoblin. But with that being said, yeah, he could be a variant Ned from another dimension. And that would also be quite interesting because it would be like, well, we've got the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home, and we appear to be seeing the Sinister Five, which means that if they are doing the Sinister Six, then there's one member that's being kept under wraps. And I can't imagine that secret member being Paul Giamatti's Rhino, put it that way. So I would more expect it to be someone like Ned Leeds' Hobgoblin or Mysterio. More on that later. But yeah, if it's a variant of Ned, quite possibly. I mean, as it stands, Jacob Batalon lost a lot of weight prior to this movie, and that could be so that he can fit into like a hobgoblin-y looking costume. Like, if I remember right, he's kind of ripped now, isn't he? Maybe that's not for any film role, maybe he just did it for himself. Either way, good job, man. But also, yes, they definitely appear to be folding traits of Harry Osborn into Flash Thompson. Something I never really thought about until it was pointed out. I thought they were just doing the kind of he's a spoiled rich kid with absentee parents kind of thing. But yeah, that does kind of line up with Harry Osborn. I didn't know he was getting blonde hair in this movie, though. That's interesting. I can't imagine how that's going to look. But maybe all the same, they're just doing that to get him more in line with the comics Flash Thompson. I'm still waiting on Zendaya playing a redhead MJ. She looks great with red hair. I don't get why they don't, but then again, maybe there's a reason. I mean, she isn't really Mary Jane Watson, she's Michelle Jones. And I feel like that's the thing that's mainly going on with the MCU Spider-Man, with things like Ned Leeds being folded into Gank Lee, with MJ becoming Michelle Jones, with Betty Brant being folded into kind of more of a Gwen Stacy sort of character, and Flash Thompson being kind of folded into Harry Osborn. I think it's more their way of saying these old ground elements that previous Spider-Man films have kind of done, such as goblins and such. We're not really doing that going forward in this movie, with obviously the exception of Willem Dafoe. I get the feeling they're just doing this because they're not going to do the same Mary Jane that we saw in Raimi, and we're not going to see Gwen Stacy in this universe, and we're not going to see the whole best friend becomes a green or hobgoblin or anything like that. So I personally think that's off the cards. But I think this is a really tight theory, and possibly, I mean, I would say the super secret sixth villain being a Ned Leeds Hobgoblin or a Flash Thompson Hobgoblin, much more likely than Paul Giamatti's Rhino being the super secret villain. The after credits scene is going to be Tobey Maguire clapping Marisa Tomei's cheeks without knowing that's Aunt May. Then when he finds out, it's going to end with, "What the fuck?" I wanted to include that. I think there's potential for them to do a clone saga with Andrew or Toby. If there truly is no way home, one of them or both could get stuck, and it could be a Ben Reilly situation. Yeah, that would be interesting if, like, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield have to get, like, kind of new IDs, and, like, they assign Tobey Maguire Ben, and they assign Andrew Garfield Kane or something, setting up that potential clone saga stuff. Scarlet Spider and all that, but honestly, I can't see them doing that. I don't see them doing the clone saga. There's always been talk of it, but I just don't see it happening. With all that said, I didn't see a Spider-Verse happening, so I've been wrong before. But also, if I do think Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are returning in this movie, I think it's just going to be a one-shot deal. I think we're going to see him in this movie, and then we're never going to see him again. I think this is going to be the sort of closure thing. Thinking we're going to see Matt Murdock back as Peter's lawyer, and I am here for it. Hey, I know you from Twitter. So there have been a lot of rumors that Charlie Cox will be returning to his role as Matt Murdock in this movie. And it does appear that there's going to be a lot of legal process stuff going on. I mean, we saw a dude's arm slamming a fold down onto the table, and a lot of people were saying, oh, that's Matt Murdock. But then the IMAX, or should I say 16:9, what we should fucking be getting in all theaters, trailer released, and we saw the dude's face, and it wasn't Matt Murdock. I think if Charlie Cox is in this movie, it will probably be a very short cameo, because, like, if they're doing a courtroom scene, I don't want it to be that long. I'm gonna be completely honest. Just a quick scene at the beginning of Act 1, have a quick Charlie Cox cameo. They realize there's nothing they can do to clear Peter's name, which leads to the multiverse stuff. Or perhaps Matt Murdock will clear Spider-Man's name for the drone attack in London, but won't be able to clear his secret identity being revealed. Definitely also a possibility right there. Doctor Strange is actually Mysterio in disguise. Let me explain. We see in the trailer a few instances of Spidey fighting Doctor Strange. In all of those instances, Strange is wearing the Eye of Agamotto. The last time we saw the eye was in Infinity War when Thanos crushed it in his hand. The Time Stone which was housed in the eye was also destroyed by Thanos in Endgame. So that begs the question, why would Strange have the Eye of Agamotto if it's been destroyed and no longer serves a purpose since there is no more Time Stone? Another important thing to note is that the last 2 times Strange was seen fighting in public, he had the eye. This will be important later. Now on to why I think it's Mysterio and how this is even possible. The last time we saw Beck, he was killed by a drone. Or was he? Peter asks Edith if it's real, to which Edith responds, "All illusions are down, Peter." This is interesting because this only confirms that the body isn't a hologram. This doesn't confirm if he's really dead or just playing dead. Mysterio could easily be pretending to be dead. We never get concrete information on that front. Now, assuming Mysterio faked his death, that means he could come back at any time. We must also remember, even without the drones, he still has the illusion tech. So how does this all tie back to Strange and the Eye of Agamotto? Mysterio can create very lifelike illusions and can use the tech to change his appearance. The caveat to his illusions is that he has to plan them out ahead of time, create the things and appearances he's going to use beforehand, and pull from a catalog of illusions he's created. That means if he wanted to impersonate Doctor Strange, he would have had to create an illusion ahead of time and base it off of the real deal to make it convincing. This is where that bit about Strange's 2 public appearances becomes really important. Mysterio's Doctor Strange illusion would be based on his public appearances, which both happened when he still had the eye. Mysterio would have no way of knowing that the eye was destroyed, which means he would have certainly included it in his illusion. It's also worth pointing out that if anyone could imitate Strange's powers, it would be Mysterio. Another thing I find interesting is that the crucial detail is the eye itself. And what is Mysterio's trademark calling card? The all-seeing eye. It's in his costume and his magic effects. The illusion unintentionally calls back to Mysterio in a way most people would overlook. And even if he is really dead, a Mysterio variant would be equally possible and feel right at home with the other variants of dead villains. If you took the time to read out my lengthy crackpot theory, I applaud you. Thanks. Goddamn, wow, that is a smart theory. And the whole stuff about the Eye of Agamotto, unless there's a huge oversight at Marvel Studios, is pretty airtight. However, there were some shots in Avengers Endgame where Doctor Strange was seen wearing the Eye of Agamotto, with many saying it's an error. And there has been some artwork for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness showing the Eye of Agamotto, so I don't know if that is necessarily a pointer towards this being a Mysterio return. It could be something that Doctor Strange maybe retrieved later on and maybe we'll get an explanation for it. Maybe it has the power to repair itself. But one must also question what mystical entity does it now contain now that the Time Stone is gone. Now the thing is, if this multiverse is all an illusion, that's gonna piss a lot of people off, as we kinda know by some of these previous theories. But here's something worth noting. The whole Mysterio faking his own death stuff lines up. Not only is Mysterio synonymous with faking everything, and totally the first guy to fake his own death. I mean, put it this way, in Daredevil Guardian Devil, Mysterio dies of a brain tumor, and he still managed to come back in the Civil War arc. But also, if you do pay close attention to the Spider-Man Far From Home final battle, once the elemental illusion goes down, Mysterio works into Plan B, which is basically have the drones shoot up everything, which then folds into him blaming it on Spider-Man. He also asked to have his illusion suit rendered, but we don't see his illusion suit get rendered until the after credits where Mysterio is dying. Now yes, we see Quentin Beck get shot by one of the drones in the gut. We then see that Beck fall down and offer Peter the glasses until it dissipates and the real Beck is seen holding a gun. But all we know there is that it's the illusion Beck that got shot in the gut, but we don't actually know if the real Beck was shot in the gut. And he just kind of flops over onto the floor writhing in pain while Peter executes the drone commands, but then when we see in the after credits later, Mysterio is looking a lot more healthy while reading that speech and screwing over Peter. So basically everything Mysterio wanted went exactly as planned, and I really do not think that Quentin Beck would ever plan for his own death. He'd never plan to sacrifice himself for his fame and glory. If he's gonna have fame and glory, he's gonna be there to see it. And he's far too much of a coward to die during the process. I mean, okay, in the eyes of a villain, too much of a coward. I mean, like, I'm too much of a coward to die. Like, it's not cowardice to not want to fucking die, okay? So now what I'm thinking is whatever new mystical power Doctor Strange has, Mysterio could in theory take it and hold Doctor Strange hostage. And then Mysterio could open the multiverse. So now think of it this way. When the villains are running amok in our world, Mysterio could pose as the interdimensional Mysterio and go fighting off the Sinister Six, proving to the world that he really is an interdimensional superhero. All while Spider-Man knows better, but now MJ and Ned are no longer on Spider-Man's side because they've forgotten all of the events of what happened before due to the spell. Now the question is, can Mysterio do the spell? I don't think he can, but maybe he could get Doctor Strange to do it. Maybe he could puppeteer Doctor Strange. It would take a lot to do that, but it's still distinctively within the realm of possibility. It would be a great way for Mysterio to get the last laugh again and remain an ongoing problem for this Spider-Man, a boogeyman that looms over Peter Parker in the MCU. Either that, or I just can't accept that my favorite superhero comic book villain is finally actually gone in live action. Still, Mysterio was done amazingly in Far From Home, so I'm not going to be mad if they don't do that. It's not my theory, but from what has been floating around out there, and from what we saw in the teaser trailer, I do fully believe that the Sinister Six will be formed by Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Tom won't be able to take on all 6 of them at once, and Doctor Strange will be dealing with bigger multiversal issues. Toby and Andrew will have to assist Tom if they have any chance of beating the Sinister Six. I know people keep denying that they are in the film, but with all the evidence and coincidences, and of course the recent Andrew leaks, it's clear to me that they are in there. Plus, if you really think about it, has Tom Spider-Man ever really fought more than one villain by himself at the same time? Considering he's only fought villains by himself, one-on-one, it makes sense that he would need help. Not to mention, it would be ridiculous to include Toby and Andrew's villains, but not themselves. I'm really looking forward to the conversations between the 3 Spider-Men. Sorry for this being a long comment. Guys, you don't owe me apologies for long comments. As I say, even with very compelling evidence out there, I'm still not going to say for sure. I'm gonna wait. And I will say that Tom Holland Spider-Man has fought multiple villains at once in the ferry scene. It wasn't really much of a fight, but he did take on the Shocker and the Vulture all at the same time. And I do think it would be cooler if Spider-Man were to take these villains on by himself. Like, the ideal situation for me would be we see Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield team up to fight Electro and Lizard. We see Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire team up to fight Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Sandman. And we do see a team up between the 3 Spider-Men, but what would be awesome for me would be if the final battle was just Tom Holland Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six, and him taking them on all alone. That would be badass. But, like, yeah, I think your rationale makes a lot of sense here. Like, they've got the villains in there, so surely they should have the Spider-Men in there. And I mean, like, yeah, like, I guess people do have some right to get disappointed if the 2 Spider-Men aren't in there, because it's kind of like, with the villains there, you kind of do set up that expectation. 1. This is part theory, part hoping, part wishful thinking. Doc Ock and Green Goblin will still be on the loose in the MCU at the end of the movie. Ock will bring together a Sinister Six comprised of MCU Spider-Man villains, and Goblin will try to pass himself off as the next Tony Stark by creating Oscorp within the MCU and joining the Thunderbolts/Dark Avengers as Iron Patriot. 2. Peter will regain his secret identity but will not clear Spider-Man's name for the attack on London. So while I do think that Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, and the other guest stars are a one-shot deal, I mean, I might be wrong about that, and I hope I am, because I love this idea. I love the idea of Alfred Molina's Doc Ock becoming the resident Doc Ock, arch-nemesis of Spider-Man in this world, and Willem Dafoe continuing on as a greater threat as Norman Osborn as well. Like, I can't think of better casting choices for Doc Ock and Green Goblin than Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe. And I would love for these two to have a future within the MCU. And I think, you know, also in regard to, like, the whole clearing Spider-Man's name for the attack on London thing, I get the feeling it will be one of those things where it's like some people believe he did it, some people believe he didn't. Like, they've kind of already set up the whole some people support Mysterio, some people support Spider-Man in, like, a lot of set photos of, like, billboards and stuff like that. And I think that's going to fold directly into the whole is he a hero or is he a menace thing that we know from the comics. So, yeah, I think that'd be a great way of doing that. I'm probably almost certainly wrong, and it could just be wishful thinking, but, deep breath, I think instead of just 3 Spider-Men, there's possibly going to be a surprise 4th one. An old man Spider-Man, played by Nicholas Hammond. Even if it is just a cameo. I think that's an awesome idea. I think it would definitely work best as a cameo because this film has a lot of characters in it already, especially if we consider there being 2 other Spider-Men in this movie. It's going to be quite a big film, but then again, Into the Spider-Verse had a lot of characters and that thing flowed pretty seamlessly. What I'd rather see than another Peter would be Miles Morales, but like, still, like, I would love to see a cameo from Nicholas Hammond because he was the first live-action Spider-Man, and it would be nice for him to get a little recognition for that. I have a theory that the Doctor Strange is a variant. The one we know wouldn't risk the timeline. It's too different than the way he didn't give up the Time Stone to Thanos unless it was necessary. I get the sense there's a lot we're not seeing in that trailer. I get the feeling he's not going to be as easy to persuade as the trailer makes it look. And that there'll be a lot of different calculations that go into it beforehand so Doctor Strange knows it's fully safe. But then, of course, he mistakes it, he miscalculates, or Peter fucks up the spell by talking over it. All things I do think that maybe Doctor Strange would account for, but I mean, I kind of put this down to the MCU Spider-Man films do have kind of a different tone, and the characters do kind of act a little differently in those movies to what they do some of the others, just to account for the tone. For example, Nick Fury being more of a goofball, I mean, it was explained by him being a Skrull, but then also, like, Tony Stark wasn't quite as smart in Spider-Man Homecoming, calling the FBI on Peter Parker. Like, I don't think the external character work with folding in other MCU characters has been that tight in the MCU Spider-Man films. So I don't know if maybe we're just taking it as it's an MCU Spider-Man film, so Doctor Strange is a little bit more lenient just to get the plot going. But I will say this, I think doing a favor for Spider-Man definitely is a bit different to surrendering the Time Stone to Thanos, but I get it, it's the same overall principle, is it is still some timeline fuckery going on. It's just obviously with Thanos, the stakes are quite a bit higher. But I mean, hey, you fuck with time, the stakes are high. That's just how it is, you know? So that right there, yeah, that's a good point. Theory. In the trailer, Green Goblin presumably drops a pumpkin bomb on the George Washington Bridge. In the comics, this bridge is the site of Gwen Stacy's death. Who killed her? Why, none other than the Green Goblin. I doubt they'll kill Michelle off, as she and Peter just connected. If he were to kill someone on the bridge, I think Ned's the guy in the chair. They've been building up their friendship little by little across Homecoming, Infinity War, Endgame, Far From Home, and now No Way Home. If they were to kill off a character, I'd say this movie would be the time. After all, Ned's died in the comics before, maybe we'll see him return as the Hobgoblin. Well, one little bit of information that does give this theory credence is that allegedly they filmed multiple different death scenes for this movie, and they're going to pick a character to kill off in this film. So one major character that's close to Peter Parker will die in Spider-Man Far From No Way Home, if these rumors are to be believed. These home titles, man. Jeez. Now, until this comment, I was thinking it would be Happy Hogan, because God knows you don't give Aunt May a love interest and let him stay alive. Poor soul. But with all that being said, like, yeah, if they wanted to echo the death of Gwen Stacy in this movie, that would be an optimal point to do so. And I'd say it's more likely Ned than MJ. But with all that being said, they could kill off MJ and bring in a Mary Jane, and maybe she could be interdimensional with that sounds weird. That sounds weird to me, especially like introducing a new love interest in the same film that they kill off the other one. Like, yeah, no, that's weird. I don't think it will be MJ. I think MJ's Peter's endgame, but possibly Ned. But I don't want them to kill Ned. He's not the kind of guy that dies. I just feel weird about them killing off a teenager. God, am I really that soft? I'm willing to bet Beck's still alive. After all, he is the master of illusion. He's so still alive. He so is. Just included this one because I wanted one more person to agree with me that Beck is alive. He's alive, damn it. We believe in Mysterio. So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And of course, in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including the Patreon. If you're feeling extra generous, like the following people, who are David 20 Covers, JK Strife, Marcus Ward, Sirius the Skeptic, Biotin Arts, Mr. SP, Sergio, George is Lost, Legendary Ray Ray, Adam Myers, and Fayalan Schwarzentraub. Thank you guys, you are the best of the best, but as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.